Hello and welcome to a new episode of the 81 All Out podcast. This is Siddhartha Vaidyanathan at Sidvi on Twitter, and I'm joined by the regular crew today, Mahesh, Ashoka, and Kartikeya. I'll link all their bios, their Twitter handles, and I'll link Kartikeya's Substack as well. Okay, great to have everyone here today. We normally meet to review a test or a series, but that is not the case here because I think 2022 is going to be a year of very few tests for India going forward. I think India hardly play. Then there's the big series coming ahead early next year against Australia, but until then, I think there are very limited number of test matches. But anyway, we thought we'd talk about an interesting trend that has been going on in Test cricket. I mean, we are it's intriguing for me especially, and I thought it'll be good to discuss. We have brought it up in our reviews, and we have discussed it in a little bit before. This is about the fourth innings run chase, but we thought we should do a little bit of a little more detailed discussion on it and find out exactly what is happening. Recently, we have seen many teams pulling off challenging fourth innings targets. As recently, Pakistan did it in Gaul recently with Abdullah Shafiq getting a big 100. England have been doing this quite regularly. They pulled off 250 plus chases against New Zealand, 3 in a row, in fact. And then they chased 370 plus 378, if I'm not mistaken, which was the highest ever run chase, by England, which was a major achievement at Edgbaston against India. So anyway, we'll get into the stats and all that soon. But before starting this podcast, the usual reminder: Cricket Beyond the Bazaar by Mike Coward has been recently republished by 81 All Out, a landmark book published in 1990 about India and Australia's cricketing relations until that point. Quite a really original book and a lot of insight, a lot of wonderful writing on matches. Please pick it up. This is the second book that we have republished via 81 All Out Publishing. The first being War Minus the Shooting by Mike Marquesi, a book around the 1996 World Cup. So you can pick that up too. Anyway, I'm just going to start with one stat. I mean, that just shows us that, since the start of 2021, there have been 58 instances of teams batting in the fourth innings. Of the 58 chases, 27 have ended in teams winning the test, and there were 21 losses for the teams batting last, and 10 matches ended in a draw. Now, this is irrespective of the target. I mean, this is just teams batting fourth. But this itself is, quite striking because usually batting fourth can be one of the hardest pursuits in a test match. So, yeah, I mean, let's start with initial impressions. Mahesh, you've been putting forth this theory for the last, maybe more than a year even, about teams chasing better in the fourth innings and willing to chase bigger scores, etc. So maybe you can start off.
A lot of the recent, when I say recent, let's say last 7 or 8 years, right? The great bowling performances have come partly because of the conditions, right? And this probably Katie is going to agree, right? Every time we talk about a turner as an underprepared track or a turning track is something that can be made to order, whereas a seaming thing somehow happens naturally. It doesn't happen naturally. There is a certain level of preparation that happens, or under preparation that happens, or lack of drying, or whatever you want to call it, right? There is a certain precondition that's required for the ball to seam around, right? And a lot of the bowlers have benefited from these, and this is also probably the era of pretty much every fast bowler being a seam bowler, right? The swing bowler is a very rare phenomenon, which was not always the case. And what that has resulted in is two things. One, the wickets tend to dry up, and when it dries up, its character changes. And a lot of the bowlers who are used to bowling on these seamer-friendly conditions are not as effective. Like I was looking at some of the records of the current day fast bowlers before coming into this episode. I mean, Pat Cummins' record across all 4 innings is great. But if you, whereas Mitchell Stark's is not, or Hazelwood's is more or less the same. There was another odd example I found. Saudi, for instance, is not the same. There are quite a few. I mean, Anderson's is really terrible. Terrible in the sense is, if you look at his average, it's okay, but like wickets per innings is really low. that was one of the things that I was thinking about. And of course, the other thing that I thought was going to contribute to this is that when the wicket is flat and when the bowling is slightly below par, I think the current day batsmen are far better at capitalizing on that than before, and logically so, right? They just like naturally the median hitter today is much better than before. And also they tend to play a lot more games. And when you play a lot more games, the fear of failure or a loss in a test match, like like a Barbados, for instance, in '97, meant a lot to us. But today you lose a test match, it doesn't matter, you move on, right? So there's also that factor which liberates people to take chances, perhaps. I mean, the chase that we had in Gabba, the India chase in Gabba, uh, is partly enabled by the liberation that it's okay to lose, right? Like I don't think if you had a series to lose, you could have had a drawn series, you had a series to lose. I'm not sure how many past teams would have taken the chance. So there's that factor as well. But primarily it's driven by the fact that I think the conditions, the modern test matches are set up in a way where the first innings advantage seems to matter a lot. And the bowlers are prepared for that. The conditions are prepared for that. And that kind of skews the game a little more in the fourth innings than before. I think that was my sense I was going for at that time. And subsequently, it's become a different beast altogether.
No, I think GABA also, it really helped that India just needed to draw that match to, uh, if they had drawn that match, then it would have been a drawn series, right? Then they could have retained the border
Yeah,
Gavaskar
but what
trophy.
if they lost, right? In the process of going for the win, what if they lost? I mean, you
Yeah, but
wouldn't want
then
to.
they would have, that's what I'm saying. So if they had to win that match to, make the series level, then it might have been totally different compared to the fact that they had to just draw it. And then once they realized at some point of time that they could actually go for it, they did. I think that made a difference for sure.
No, that's what
Compared
I'm
to
saying. In
say,
fact, that's exactly my point. If you remember the 2007 England series, where Dravid was a captain, I think his last series as a captain, the final match, I mean, they could have easily gone for a target, set a target, and gone for the win. But they just absolutely played it safe, blocked it out. Of course, Karthikeya is going to bring out the conditions here and whatever. Uh, but the fact is that when you play more games, I think the value of a loss is lesser, and that to some extent plays a part as well. But that's not the most important part. Yeah.
Since we are coming off, or I don't know if we are coming off a golden bowling era, if the bowling era is over or whatnot, but there is a scarcity of openings for batsmen against quality teams. You can't, you don't get an opening against an Indian attack or an Australian attack in conditions that favor them, or even a South African attack. So I think that the batsmen are forced to attack more, or play shots at balls. Sometimes they come off, like Barristow's innings. If you see Barristow's innings, the first 60 balls, like he didn't look like he could connect anything, but he kept on swinging it. So I think that's a rule more than even before all this baseball nonsense. Batsmen are forced to attack because you have to extract some value at the end of the day from your innings. You can't just try to survive. The only person who still does that, I believe, is Pujara, to an extent Elgar, but that's about it. Even if you see the recent tests, you can see Karunaratne. I didn't know Karunaratne had the reverse sweep in him, but he's doing reverse sweeps. He's coming down the track, and so conditions are dictating the batsman to take more risks because the opportunities are scarce, and when the opportunities, when the conditions are very, very good for batting and batsmen are aggressive, more runs come off as a result. So I think it is more to do with batsmen going for, shots, irrespective of what the target is. If it is 150 or 250 or 350, they're just going for it. But even then, explaining a 370 chase, explaining 275 chases is like bizarre. In a year, it is just bizarre, very bizarre.
But those chases were very common in the 2000s, in the the era of the Titanium era Galacticos. That's basically the only decade in the history of Test cricket in which a 200 chase has been won more often than it has been lost. And in the 2010s, it was lost more often than it was won. In the 2020s, currently it's about even. I don't know which way it's heading, but this is not unusual. The other thing is to get to Mahesh's point about this Brisbane thing. India form on trying to commit suicide in the fourth innings. They've 4 times at least I can think of that they've lost in the fourth innings in test matches where, they on another day they might have saved it. There was the test match in New Zealand in February 2014. There was the test match in Adelaide in 2014. Then there was a test match at the Oval in 2018, if I'm correct. Then there was Brisbane, and just before Brisbane there was Sydney. And actually, Sydney is the one example where they actually tried to save the test match with Vihari and Ashwin. I mean, as far as chases are concerned, I don't think that there's anything special going on. I mean, there are, it seems to me from all the, if you look at the test match record, the thing about fourth innings chases is that they only become possible when time is no longer a factor. When there's enough time in the test match for the result, for the runs to be chased down, the runs tend to get chased down. And this is a little subtle because it doesn't necessarily depend only on the fourth innings run chase, speed. It depends on the scoring rate in the test match as a whole. So if in the test match as a whole, in the first innings, for instance, the runs have come at 3.5, 4 and over, then chasing 375 overs is not that hard in the fourth inning. But in a test match where teams have struggled to score at 2.5 and over in the first innings, then in those conditions, 300 is a lot of runs in 75 overs. So it's really about how easy it is to score in the conditions, how run-friendly the conditions are, how much depth the bowling has. Those are the things which affect this stuff. And I think, I mean, the England situation this year has been a bit of a special case. I think in that, the ball that they've been using has been really weird. It's been changed over and over again, and like almost every innings.
They've also had one of the hottest summers or something, so the weather could be playing a part too.
Yeah, the weather has been weird. Everything's been weird. And Johnny Bairstow has been like in gun form, like utterly gun form. So, yeah, I'm generally skeptical of, the idea that, suddenly someone discovers a new way to win in test cricket. That has tended not to happen, and I don't think it's happening right now.
Your point about the time available is very valid, and that is certainly helping the cause here. And 2000s is it was just a flatter sort of era, and it was just a bloated, high inflation era. So every innings was inflated, and so was the fourth innings. So I completely agree with you on not treating that seriously. But is it not true that as players play more, and especially as players play more formats, they reevaluate the idea of risk reward in cricket, and we've already seen that happen in Test cricket in many different ways. Of course, bowlers find a way to come back and so on. But is it fair to say that when cricket was kind of semi-professional, the fourth innings chases tend to be cautionary for more reasons than just merit?
Scoring was slower in Test cricket in the 60s than it is today. That's true. And it was even slower in the 30s than it was in the 60s. That's also true. I mean, some of it has to do with the change in the LBW law. Some of it has to do with some other things, with covered pitches and stuff like that. Some of it has to do with the fact that bats have become bigger and more powerful. Batsmen have become fitter. Bowlers have become, they've brought the boundaries in some of these grounds. More players have more shots which they can play, and this has the effect of producing quicker dismissals and more runs marginally. But it's still not the case that the batting has suddenly gained ascendancy or bowling has suddenly gained ascendancy. The risk is maybe marginally more in the batsmen are marginally more prepared to take chances than they used to be.
I would not be surprised if batsmen are leaving fewer balls these days compared to, say, earlier. I mean, that whether they are playing shots to more balls and whether they're trying to score runs off more balls than they were earlier. I mean, I don't know. It'd be good to find out. But what has basically happened because of that is we are also seeing extremes. I mean, we are not only seeing chases of 378 and 352. We are also seeing 36 all out. Like I'm saying, it's like in the same sort of space. We are also seeing teams collapsing for less than 100 quite often. England fell in the Tour of India, I think 81 all out in Ahmedabad, most famously 81 all out. There have been other sub 100 scores. So I'm saying there's also like the other extreme to it, right? And that could be because of the way they're batting.
No. So, I mean, that's a common sort of reasoning, right? I'm not sure I buy into it because one is that it is, I mean, I'm sure KD has said this many times before, right? It is almost impossible for any batsman in history to bat well when the ball is moving around so much, and you got skillful bowlers doing that, right? So, in fact, my theory on the fourth innings chase comes from that. The fact that if you are seeing so much volatility in the first inning scores and a lot of sub 100 scores, it logically means that the first innings is a lot more conducive for bowlers to exploit the conditions. And you keep getting those conditions, you're going to keep sort of the system is going to create such bowlers who are particularly, better suited to exploiting those conditions. And over a period of time, you'll get more bowlers who are coming through the ranks. And the selectors will keep picking those bowlers more often than not. And naturally, if you're going to, there is a 5-match test series and 3 matches are decided by who wins the first day, you're better off going with bowlers who will exploit the first day conditions better than, like someone who can last 5 days, right? And the whole fitness, I mean, this is again a marginal factor, but one of the things that you notice about fitness is that, and it is true even at a recreational level if you play, right? There is the knowledge of fitness is so high and the level of preparedness and professionalism is so high that going into the first day of a test match, the players are hyper fit. They are so, in pristine sort of prime fitness form. And you can see that especially in Australia, where you see them working out in the morning. Indian team doesn't quite do that in the ground, but even with Australian, both men and women's team, you'll see them foam rolling. You'll see them, like working on their deltoids, and you can see that they're going into the test in prime condition on day one. So all that wear and tear has to happen, and then naturally, you are going to be a little bit more suboptimal, and that's all it takes for the skew to change. And it's not a significant skew. I mean, I think one of the earlier podcasts we were discussing, right? If let's say 5% of the chases were successful earlier, even if it becomes 7.5, it's a 50% increase to the previous baseline. That's all it is. But on an absolute basis, it's only 2.5%.
I'll give you the stat that's probably also making it a little more stark. I mean, between 2017 and 2020, there were 109 instances of teams batting in the fourth innings and only 32 successful chases. But since the start of 2021, it's 58 instances and 27 teams have ended up winning. So, I mean, we're also watching in comparison of what happened recently. So that's probably also making it like a little more stark in our heads compared to, as KD says, in the 2000s, this was happening quite often.
But you do get collapses in the fourth innings, no? I mean, we've seen there were collapses in the 2000s also, no? I mean, you remember, even if you just take England versus India in India in the 2000s, India have been bowled out for 100 in the fourth innings in 2006, and they made 380 whatever it was in the fourth innings 2 years
in 2008.
later. Yeah. So, I mean, those sorts of things are, I mean, if there's time, those sorts of things are not unusual. I mean, even in the 80s, you can think of that. No, I mean, they've been bowled out by 100, 400 by Bracewell and Hagley. And then before that, they've made 340 something in one day in the tight test. The difference between making 270 and 340 in a day is like, it has to do with the conditions. It has to do with the scoring conditions, and it has to do with whether the opposition has a bowler who can shut an end down, and if they don't, then it's a free for all basically.
So that brings me to this question. You also mentioned this in your blog as well, that if it is a factor of conditions, which I agree, why is it that we tend to see, the first thing we are taught in cricket is that over a period of time, test match wicket wears down. And on the last day, it's difficult to bat because of all the wear and tear. The bounce is inconsistent. The ball is moving a little bit. It's turning quite a bit. Whatever. There are plenty of reasons. And it shows in the batsman's record, right? I mean, that's the other funny thing I found, or all of us know, is that typically for a batsman, the fourth innings record is not as good as the first innings record. But it's not true for bowlers that the fourth innings record is significantly better than first or second innings records. So there's that conundrum as well. But
even spinners?
Even for spinners, it's not a significant difference. If you look at very few, right? There are some like Bishan Singh Bedi or there are some bowlers for whom the difference is stark. But if you look at Murali or like even Ashwin, it's not that stark. Maybe Ashwin, I'm not sure. But maybe spinners a little more than that. But I'm saying on average, for a batsman, the drop in average between first and second innings to fourth innings, it's not the same for bowlers. So that's a weird conundrum.
Correct. And just to add to that, all the recent chases that we have seen have one thing in common, right? Irrespective of the skill in batting and bowling, that the conditions ease out after, let's say, day 3 or day 4.
But why do you think that's happening across? Like it's happening in England, it's happening in New Zealand, it's happening in South Africa, it's also happening in Sri Lanka or what? At least in Sri Lanka, it should not happen, right?
And Pakistan, not to forget, Karachi was could have been a chase had they had more time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's partly the conditions for sure, but that seems too simple for me, right? That also goes against what we have known about Test cricket for so long, that the wicket progressively gets worse to bat on. But I'm also reasonably convinced that it's got something to do with the bowling. It's got something to do with the ability to bowl in the fourth innings, the ability to last a Test match with the same intensity, right? You can argue that the fourth innings great bowler today is as good as the fourth innings great bowler of any other era. But the great bowler in the first innings today is a lot more potent than before. So there is a certain drop in intensity between first and fourth innings, even if you argue that the baseline on fourth innings is on par with the previous eras or whatever. I just have the sense that the great bowlers of today are a lot more potent on day 1 and day 2 than day 4 and day 5.
Yeah, but that's because that's one way to put it, I think. Another way to put it would be that this whole idea that you need a great batting lineup to chase in the fourth innings is just untrue. Basically what's been happening is that attacks have been deeper, and so the first 3 innings are getting completed faster, and so the fourth inning starts a little earlier. So the wicket is not really as worn as we normally expect it to be. It's not really ever a 5th day wicket. It's usually a late 3rd day wicket, early 4th day wicket. So in terms of the overs that have been bowled, in terms of the time, most of the time, most of these Test matches are getting over early on the 5th day or something like that. Because if you think about it, if you look at the record, right? England, for example, have had 2 periods in which they've had a lot of fourth innings chases in excess of 200, which have been successful. 2019 to 2022, they've had 6 chases, 362 against Australia, 277 against Pakistan, and then the 4 chases this year.
And must have been one at the turn of the century, is it? 2001 to 5 or whatever.
When they won in Karachi and all that.
Yeah, Karachi, Colombo.
To 2001. And those are, guess what those 2 periods are? Those are periods in which, by common consensus, everyone thinks England's batting was crap.
Which was the second period?
97 to 2001. When
oh, wow.
Yeah, that is the turn of the century, right? Which is what I was.
That includes Karachi and Colombo, right?
Yeah, Karachi, Colombo.
Atherton, Hussain.
Mark Butcher, Ashes 100, right?
Top, yeah.
Atherton, Hussain, Stewart. They were constantly getting blown away by Ambrose and Walsh and McGrath and Gillespie and Donald and McPollock and Wasim and Wakar, and this was like Atherton was averaging 20 against these people and all that. But that's the period when they have 6 or 7 chases in excess of 200 during that period, all over the world. And this basically sort of illustrates the fact that Test matches are about the depth of the attack that you're facing, and if you're in the game, then you still have a chance, and if you're chasing 200 in the 4th innings and there's enough time, then you still have a chance, especially if the wicket is good.
But how does the depth of the attack work here? Because the deeper attack, you would imagine, can sustain themselves through four
It
innings,
also,
right? Why is that? Why are they losing it? Why are they not effective enough in the fourth innings?
it also means that the fourth innings is coming earlier in the test match, no? So the wicket is not bearing that much.
First of all, I don't think a lot of the chases happen before the fifth day, right? I mean, like the last two tests in Sri Lanka or the Karachi one, I mean, they could have gone for even the sixth day, some of them, right? So I'm not
I
sure
mean,
that
some
fully.
of these are really good wickets. Some of these are really good wickets. That's true.
No, but even fourth day, like it's not like, okay, then I don't know. I mean, at least I grew up thinking that a fourth day wicket is harder to bat than first day wicket, right? I mean, usually you always say second and third day are the best days to bat. Even fourth day was going to be difficult. And we've seen plenty of collapses even in the fourth day.
It is all of these chases that you see. There have been 7 failed chases where the target has been in excess of 200 in 2022. So there have been 7 wins and 7 defeats in 2022. So it's not as though every time someone lines up a chase of 200 or more, teams are chasing it down. They're chasing it down about once in 2 innings.
But 50% of chasing more than 200 is quite strikes quite a.
Yeah, but it's over a short, small number of test matches.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, it's an unusually good run. I mean, England are not going to chase that many runs in 4 consecutive test matches like that all the time.
I mean, after the South Africa series, when they chase 250 plus in each, we will talk then.
No, but it's also equally true, right? With that approach, they're going to have a lot more of first innings collapses of under 100. And they're going to probably chase more scores of 200, more than 200 in the fourth innings. And that's really the risk reward that they're playing. It's just that except when they are going to get out for under 100 on seaming conditions, somebody's going to come and say, oh, baseball doesn't work. Somebody's going to come and, like Graham Gooch is the man to teach them technique on how to play the moving ball. McCullum should go back to New Zealand. All those kind of things will start. But it is true that with that approach, they're going to have more successful fourth innings run chases at the cost of something else.
Also, one point I want to bring up, which Ashoka said about the defensive bowling. I mean, it's again could be just what I'm seeing on, and could be recency bias as well. But it seems really hard to, especially with the current batsmen and the kind of form they are, with the kind of range they have. It's hard to bowl defensive to them when the conditions are good for batting and when they are in that kind of mode. I mean, how are you going to set that field, 7-2 field? How are you going to? I mean, there used to be this concept of bowling negative, right? Where you basically go, over the wicket, left arm spinner over the wicket, bowls wide of leg stump and tries to. Now what? I mean, batsmen have enough ways to counter that. Reverse sweep, or they can figure it out. I mean.
That did happen in the Pakistan series, right? Like Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Prabhat Jayasuriya, for a while, he was bowling over the wicket, no? And they did find ways to hit it. Like some tried to reverse sweep it from that angle. Some tried to, scoop it. Babar and Rizwan, I think. Not Rizwan. Babar mostly.
But it worked one time. It didn't work the second time, no? I mean, they got bowled out for 260.
Yeah, but the second time they also remember that Dhananjaya was so conservative. He made sure that the target was well beyond their reach before he could even declare.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that matters. I mean, they could have still batted out time. I mean, look, they're going to take chances. Players are prepared to take chances because they have more shots that they think they can play. And it is probably true now that if you have a lineup of 6 batsmen, then the number of scoring shots that they have all told between the 6 of them is greater now on average than it was 25 years ago. That's probably true.
Yeah, and they're practicing it. No, I mean, this is not something that they're just doing in the test, as we discussed after the Edgbaston test. I mean, Joe Root and Bairstow and all they are like properly practicing all these shots in the net to execute it in the thing. It's not like they just arrive there and start playing these.
That is all true. That is true. And I mean, but it's still, it's bizarre that cost of a wicket is still high in test. And how much ever shots you have, you just have, if you have like 10 shots, that is 10 ways of getting out. Also, you can score 10 ways of scoring runs, but that's also getting out, ways of getting out. So the odds are not in the favor of the batsman as the test progresses to, keep reversing or, play scoop and whatnot. The prime example of that in this Pakistan-Sri Lanka series is Dikwela. He did play, like every ball is going to get him out, and he did play shots almost to every ball. He got a 50, entertaining 50 in the first test, but then he also failed subsequently. So that is the problem of, if you have too many shots, you actually have too many ways of getting out. And that's what is, makes this whole chases kind of puzzling, because you expect if the batsmen are playing too many shots, they're going to get out at some point.
No, so one of the things I was thinking about before coming here is there was a podcast that we did with Amol Muzumdar on coaching the young generation of cricketers, right? And one of the things that he was mentioning is that, when we grew up, whatever the coach told, we lapped onto it, right? If the coach told, do not play outside the off stump, you didn't play outside the off stump. But today the batter is saying, this is what works for me, right? This is what works for me. This is what I do. So there's that confidence that, I play my game, right? There is that confidence. And also, like, for instance, if you remember Mike Gatting's reverse sweep in the 87 World Cup, or, Damien Martin's shot in Adelaide, we went through this time where we, like, the cricket ecosystem assigned such great importance for one flaw, which was always happening, right? But that is not happening right now because there's simply too much cricket. The consequence of playing a reckless shot is not the same as before. It's not like, and the influence of writers and editors, and it's like, if let's say a great cricket writer writes saying, oh, this was a reckless shot, it had consequences. The selectors were reading. Now nobody reads. Now the whole system is so professional that those insecurities are not there anymore. And then these are better hitters. And a reverse sweep played today is not the same as reverse sweep played like 10 years back. The percentages are a lot better for that shot. I would say even for the scoop shot. I mean, they're really good at executing those shots. In some cases, they don't even differentiate between playing. I mean, I was a little surprised you said Karunaratne was playing reverse sweep, because he's always played it. And he's not even a T20 batsman. He plays it quite a lot. There was another player that I was thinking of, who's primarily a test batsman, but he plays a lot of reverse sweep. The name kind of skips me. So the fact that they play so many matches, the fact that they are more content about expressing themselves as individual batters, and the ecosystem has changed and become more professional. The coaching system has changed and become more professional, and people simply do not pay the same price for one reckless sort of choice. Also helps in liberating players to go for these shots.
So why not address the most important reason for this, which I disagree with, by the way? T20 and short form cricket. I know there is this temptation to say that T20, the arrival of T20s has resulted in this kind of improvement in range and improvement in scoring rates and all that. The range perhaps has a bit of a truth in that, because obviously a Bairstow who is playing in the IPL would be practicing a certain set of strokes, which would then, there would be a sort of a shift that happens when it comes to when he's practicing for the next series as well. But I think if you look at since 2012, I mean, effectively, I'm not looking before 2012, because even though T20s were around before then, I think we can just see the real effect of T20 only after 2010 or 2012. And even one day cricket, which has drastically changed over the last 15, 20 years. I think you have many number of chases where teams have been batting quite, in what you would call a typical mode, like in a sensible test match mode, and getting to the target, whether it's the recent match in Gaul, or whether it's West Indies against Bangladesh, that famous match where Kyle Meyer scored a double. West Indies chased 395 in that, quite remarkable. Or whether it's that match in Sharjah where Pakistan chased against Sri Lanka with Misbah ul Haq and all in the dark, when they got a pretty tough target. I mean, all of that is like pretty, I think it's, one can only take this theory so far.
There's no effect of T20 evident in any record.
And how do you make that connection? Like, what is the parameter you choose to?
Most of the fast fourth innings run chases have come between 2000 and 2014, or 1999 and 2014 in the history of Test cricket. So that's not because of T20. There may be a time some years from now when the Test match lineups are chock full of IPL stars. You can imagine like India having like 6 Rishabh Pant clones in the batting lineup. That's possible, but that's not the case right now. I mean, there's very little overlap between test teams and T20 sides, and test teams and franchise 11s for one thing.
What are you talking about? India
Also-
has
also-
a team which is chock full of IPL stars. Already that is there. Pant is there, Kohli is there.
By
but
KD's definition, Kohli and Rohit are not IPL stars, right?
No, of course they're not IPL
They're
stars.
IPL baggages.
When you're playing test cricket, you're 6 people in an entire country. Okay, you're not going to be manufactured in some system. You're extremely special. You're not, and test cricket is really hard. I mean, so
No,
you have to.
KD, you have this distinction, right? You make this distinction between batters and hitters, right? And that's, I think, a fantastic distinction, where you say that Kohli is batting, he's not hitting, which is the problem that he has in T20. So
Yeah.
I think what we can say is, if a test team is filled with 6 hitters compared to say 6 batters, then you're really looking at a shift in thing there. But that is definitely not happening at the moment.
Then
Yeah,
one fourth innings they'll chase 600, and there'll be like 100 first innings that they'll get out for 100. No.
Yeah, but Pant doesn't hit in test cricket.
That's what I'm saying. So he's not a hitter in test. He's a batsman in test. So I'm saying that the real shift will happen when you start getting hitters in test. And whether that will happen, I don't know.
You can't get them.
You can't think of a single hitter in test. I mean, the closest thing we've ever had to a hitter in test cricket is probably Shahid Afridi, and even he was not really a hitter in tests. Even he batted. It's not. I mean, they're competing. No, I mean, once you have to compete, you do what you can to survive. No, in that competition. I mean, there's a reason why Shahid Afridi takes 4 hours to make 140 in a test match. No.
And the other side, the flip side of the coin, which I always want to make, is that when you get hitting in test cricket, it is far superior to T20. I mean, you can hit for 6 hours, right? I mean, there is no, like for instance, when Pant goes on a rampage in test cricket, there is no match for it. Even Pant in full flow in a T20 cannot match the same thrill of it.
But then that is not consistent. No, you can't keep hitting in a test match.
No, sometimes you can, like the way Pant played in Chennai against Jack Leach, right? Like he hit 8 or 9 sixes right over the fielder's head. You do get those days, right?
Over the years, there have been a number of tests where teams have scored quickly to get to the target in the final innings. So
no, the only case to be made for modern batting is the fact that every, like we discussed earlier, every era will reassess the risk reward of batting, and therefore they will tend to bat a little more aggressively than before, at least on identical conditions. And that's got to do with the way test cricket itself evolves. It's got nothing to do with other formats influence, and to some extent maybe one day cricket you can argue influence, but T20 cricket is so far away from test cricket that unless you get Andre Russell playing test cricket, it's very hard to make a case that had any influence.
I think one thing one factor which probably has had an effect, which we should mention, I think, is DRS, because DRS has basically taken pad play out of the picture in test cricket. Because and so that has changed the way players are approaching spin. That's one of the reasons why players are playing more shots against spin. I mean, that's why you see so much sweeping and reverse sweeping and whatnot. Because you that line of defense has been taken away from the batsman, because you get out LBW now, whereas previously you could sort of hope to get the benefit of the doubt if you're like well forward and whatnot. And that's gone now. You can't play with the pad behind the bat. The bat behind the pad anymore. So that's one of the reasons why they are playing the way they are. Basically, the illusion that test cricket has speeded up is due to the fact that bowling attacks are deeper and wickets are falling fast. It's not really about scoring, because what that does is that gives you that gives batsmen nowhere to hide. No, I mean, they're not going to. How many? I mean, you see off the opening pair, then you see off the first change bowler. Then who do you score against? You have to take a chance somewhere. No, you have to start scoring somewhere, and so you might as well start trying to score. And this is actually where Pujara sort of got a little stuck in, like, 2020, 2021, 2020. Where he kept coming up against these attacks where there was just nothing to hit. That's one of the reasons why his scoring rate dropped from like the late 40s to mid 30s. And that makes a huge difference. No, over 100 balls, if you're scoring 15 runs less, that means you're just not progressing. One of the things is that if the wickets continue to be flat for a sustained period of time, then bowlers will get worn down, and then I think you will see attritional bowling coming back again in Test cricket.
I wanted to bring up, two tests when I spoke about the historical aspect. And it was quite interesting when I went back to the archives. There was the India-Pakistan test in Karachi in 1978, really famous test where Pakistan chased 164 runs in less than 25 overs in the final innings. And, that's quite a legendary chase because Miandad and Asif Iqbal, I mean, they basically just, they ran so many twos and threes in that innings and ran the Indian fielders ragged, basically. So that is a famous chase. And, you're talking about a run rate of 6.6 runs an over. And then you have the India-West Indies test in Jamaica in 1983, which was, for all practical purposes, washed out by rain. But then there just happened to be, a window where they found that they could dry the pitch. And then West Indies went on to chase 173 in, again, around 25 overs, 25.2 overs, run rate of 6.8. You're talking like 1978, 1983 at that time. And I went back to reports around both those tests. And it's interesting how both of them mentioned one limited overs cricket. And how, because that was around the time when limited overs cricket was picking up. You had the 1975 World Cup and you had that. So it's interesting how each time there is a sort of a quick run chase in Test cricket, it seems that, the limited overs form does get a mention. And as we are seeing now with T20, it's just the form is different, but the comparisons remain.
But in that Pakistan series in 78, it happened twice, no? I mean, it happened in the...
Correct. They chased in Lahore also. Yeah.
Yeah, it happened in Lahore where they chased 128 in about little over 20 overs on the fifth day. And then they chased 164 in 25 overs. So it's not like, they had a lot of really good stroke makers. I mean,
they had an amazing batting lineup. Of course. I mean, you had
Khan.
I'll read out the batting lineup. I mean, Majid Khan, Asif Iqbal, Miandad, Imran Khan. I mean, that's like you're talking about. Yeah, Zahir Abbas also late. I mean, you're talking about 5 of the great Pakistani batsmen right there. I mean, Imran all-rounder, but the rest were great batsmen. Yeah.
And India didn't really have that much bowling, let's face it.
Carson Ghavri, Kapil Dev, who was just starting out, Mohinder Amarnath, Bedi, who was probably in the last phase of his career. Yeah, that's true.
A tangential query for you guys. What do you think was the bowling average of Imran Khan in fourth innings?
24, 23.
He's asking it's because it's probably high. It's what, 28?
Yeah. No, it's 42.
30 plus.
42.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So he got 19 innings and 21 wickets. He doesn't even have a 5-wicket haul in the fourth inning. So I mean, which reiterates the point that it is about the conditions. Right?
What about Wasim? I'm pretty sure Wasim would have had a very good fourth innings average.
Wasim was 21.66. Yeah.
That's terrific. I mean,
it depends on where you bowled. It depends on the breakdown and all that. I haven't checked, but I'm just
also reverse swing. No, reverse swing used to help them a lot in the final innings.
No, but I mean,
in many places
also had it. So
yeah. But the point about bowlers' intensity is something that Dravid himself brought up after Edgbaston, and I was surprised to hear it from himself because in a way he's dissing his own bowlers, but he did say that it's important that he spoke about the South Africa series where India lost 2 tests by 7 wickets. Then they lost Edgbaston by 7 wickets. He said that these 2 series have shown us that it is important to maintain our intensity through the 4 innings, through the first and second innings. And, that's something that we need to work on. So, yeah, I mean, it could be a factor that they're much potent in the first innings than in the second.
I don't know what he means by theoretically possible, right? Like, for instance, before a test match, you have so much time to be in prime condition. You can go to the gym, you can use the foam roller, you can use the massager, you can do all that, right? But on the day of the match, you're going to go and play for 7 hours or 6 hours on the field. You come back, you barely have time to recover. It is naturally going to get progressively worse. You can argue it's true for for all the time, right? But the thing is, the cricketers of an earlier era didn't have as many opportunities and as much advancement in fitness, knowledge and equipment and access to be as primed on first day as the current generation is. So the current generation, while enjoying an immense advantage, also are going to pay for it by the drop in intensity. I don't know. It's not even something that you can fix, is my sense.
No, but the drop in intensity was eventually gets made up by the wearing of the pitches in many cases, right? So even if you're at 80%, if you have wide cracks on the pitch, you are likely to be that much more successful, right?
No, that's one point. But like if you were to, let's say, take Kapil for an instance, for example, right? My argument is that Kapil came on the first day with not as much prep as a Bumrah does. And therefore, if you take his, let's say, let's give a fitness score, right? Like fitness prime score. Yeah, the difference between first year and last year wouldn't have been much. But for Bumrah, it's quite stark. Even if you argue that the fifth day prime score for Bumrah is better than Kapil, that's one thing. The other thing is, if you remember Kapil bowling in the, with a semi-injured sort of hip or groin or whatever in Melbourne in 81.
Melbourne.
You're not going to find another bowler bowling like that. You're simply not going to see a bowler who is not fully fit going full throttle.
So my next question is that before the Edgbaston test, Ben Stokes made a comment which was widely publicized as the moment when Test cricket changed forever. He said, "We will chase." After winning the toss, he said, "We will chase." He didn't say we will field. He said, "We will chase." So apparently, many English journalists said that is it. That is when Test cricket changed forever. Anyway, irrespective of whether it changed or not, the question I have is, do you think teams will start doing this sort of reverse, taking, this reverse home advantage, where they find ways to prepare pitches that are getting better with time, and then as opposed to, the usual thoughts of home advantage that we have, where you prepare like in India, you'll prepare a pitch that basically by day 2 is like gone, and then your spinners will just take over. Do you at all see that happening, or you feel it can't happen because it's so weather dependent and it's so hard to prepare like pitches like that?
Yeah, I think certain countries might wear, if they know the venue beforehand and they have some kind of, local knowledge as to how the pitches will behave, they might take the decision. I don't see India doing that ever. I don't see Indian pitches, easing out after day 3 or 4, after being vicious for the first 2 days. That's not how traditional Indian pitches have been. So I don't think, at least for the subcontinent, it will be rarer, but maybe England, maybe New Zealand. Those are the two places. And, the anomalous South Africans, I don't know what happened there also. So those 3 countries, I surely see that happening.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, in the last, the last 2-3 years, the most stunning chase for me personally was that the West Indies chase, because, it came in Asia, where it's very hard to chase like that. I mean, of course, after that, Pakistan won at Gaul, but that West Indies chase, I was like blown away that Bangladesh couldn't defend 395 on the final.
Yes.
Yeah. Kyle, my special. But hang on, are you like, I don't even get it. I completely disagree with that point, because it's not like you decide one day, okay, if I bat fourth, I have a distinct advantage in Test cricket. Test cricket doesn't work like that. There is no arbitrage in this game, right? There are some things that you can make a strategic choice in reaction to what's going on. I mean, let's say, for instance, on the first day of a pitch, if there is a possibility that you can get all out for 60, you said you're number 11 to bat and whatever. That's really the extent of strategy or tactics that can work. To simply say, okay, the only thing that I'll concede for both Bazball and the Stokes statement is that for a lineup like England, given their strengths, it makes sense to kind of find a different point on the risk-reward frontier of giving yourself a greater chance of chasing at the cost of losing, more first day sort of more first innings cheap scores, right? And it's okay, but it is still on that frontier. It still means that you could choose this and have a certain risk reward, and you could choose something else and it's a different risk reward. But otherwise, I do subscribe to Vision Cricket Monthly, and I enjoy that magazine immensely. I like the editor. What's his name? Phil
Walker.
Well, Walker, I really like the way he writes. Very romantic writing. I just absolutely love it. And the last two editions have been so full of optimism. It's like some of the commentary is about how Test cricket is changing right in front of our eyes, and we should be celebrating. I enjoy that kind of writing, even though it makes no sense. So I'm all happy for those kind of narratives. But having said that, the reality is it doesn't change anything.
You enjoy that kind of writing, even though it makes no sense.
But okay, that's because it's done really well. I mean, there are people who do it really poorly, but Western Cricket Monthly does it beautifully, particularly Phil Walker.
I'm mostly worried about what Ben Stokes is going to say next. I mean, he changed Test cricket by saying we are going to chase. Then he killed one-day cricket by retiring.
No, and Ben Stokes went to the extent, I mean, he was probably saying this tongue in cheek also, partly, but he went to the extent of saying, I was wishing India set us a 400 plus target to see how we would chase and all that. This is all like taking things to a different level. Huh?
Okay, in June in England, okay, I understand Ben Stokes thinking that, okay, the wicket will not break on the fourth day because it's not that hot yet, in June. So, there's not that much heat on the wicket that doesn't dry out so much. And it just plays really well. There have been a lot of high scoring test matches in England in June. I think teams tend to send the opposition in because they want to get them out cheaply on the first day and get ahead. That's still the way to win test matches, to get ahead in the first innings and win from there. Even in 2022, that's how most test matches have been won.
Yeah, I think what one thing that could happen, especially in certain conditions, is what we saw at Gaul in the second test against Pakistan, where teams are unwilling to declare even when they have like a 400, 410 target. If there's time in the match to basically go with the time rather than with the runs, and say that we don't want to give this team more than 110 overs or 100 overs or something to go for it.
Yeah, but that's always been the case in test matches. No, I mean, teams have always made decisions based on how much time there's remaining. That's been the main driver of whether or not.
But they have made decisions based on how much time remaining to bowl the other team out. But in this case, I'm saying the decision could also have another parameter there, which is how much time do we leave to not only bowl them out, but to not give them enough time to chase.
Yeah, but that's also there. No, I mean, if you have a chance of, batting the other side out of the game, so giving them basically no chance of winning and forcing them to just, defend for however much time is remaining to save the test match. And that's a legitimate idea, no? That's always been there. Ganguly declared late on the fifth morning.
Calcutta.
Yeah. And then again in Sydney, they batted again and extended the lead to 400.
I mean, even the tight test, right? Tight test, Border was not convinced that he had to declare. And they decided overnight with Simpson's inputs that they had to declare. And we did have a tight test. I mean, who expected Sunil Gavaskar to start out like that? I mean, okay, Kapil Dev scored 100 in the first innings. That makes sense. But who expect Gavaskar to start out like that? I mean,
well, Alan Border for one.
Yeah, Border did. I'm just saying, like, you could dismiss it as past, but Gavaskar was a real threat. I mean, it's not the first big chase he's been part of, right? I mean, there was another one in England which he nearly pulled off. So every time, so there is a certain recency bias for sure, but that's always been the case in Test cricket. Right? There is, okay, the only factor you can argue is that in a 6-hour sort of window, a batsman of today are going to score a little more than that. Therefore, the threshold has to be higher. But that threshold has been getting higher right through the history. And I don't see this as anything inorganic.
The interesting thing about the tight test, which I wanted to, which I recently, which I wanted to bring up is Ravi Shastri, who played in that tight test, who was in fact not out at the end of that tight test. 347, right? India chased. But when he was coach of the Indian team in Brisbane, perhaps because it was away from home, or maybe it was an Indian team that was not full strength or whatever, he said, I didn't think that we were going to, a chance of victory was that high in the final day in Brisbane with the amount of runs and this thing. And it was only, of course, he made that statement about how at tea time, Gill and Pant were talking, and then he walked past them and he realized that he didn't have to say anything because they had decided to go for the win. And That's it. He let them do what they wanted.
Those are all stories, man. I mean, the basic fact is that Brisbane is a fast scoring ground. Look at the scoring rates in the first innings at Brisbane compared to the first innings at Sydney, or Melbourne. I mean, it's the same players playing against the same players and scoring much quicker.
No, but it's fair enough to say we're chasing 320 odd in the final.
No, if the conditions are allowing you to score at 3.5 and over, then 100 runs in a session is one thing. If the conditions are making it hard for you to score 2.5 and over, then 100 runs in a session is a lot. No, that's the distinction. No, I mean, and especially while Rishabh Pant was in, there was 100 in the last 20 overs was on.
Yeah, I mean the conditions were good, but also the Australian bowling was not as. I mean, Stark had a really bad day on the final day, so that also added to it. It helped. It helped India that Stark had.
Basically, it was fast. It was, and by fast scoring, I mean it's not just the speed of the outfield; it's also what shots are on. No, I mean whether the square cut is on, whether the pull is on, whether the bounce is true, whether the pace is even. Those are all things which matter. No, whether like the cover drive is like clearly flying off the bat, or whether it's not always being timed. I mean, we all know examples where really good players who have shots all over the pitch can barely get the ball off the square for an hour or an hour and a half. And that's not because they're stupid. No, that's because it's hard to score in those conditions. So the speed of scoring which a test match is allowing, which a ground is allowing, is a big factor, and the correlation is remarkable. You should look up the record on this, really.
But Gabba, until India chased Gabba, the highest fourth innings chase at the Gabba was not any 300 plus score.
Yeah, but that's because Australia are blowing teams out of the water, in the first innings of those test matches for the most part.
Yeah. So you're saying India staying in the test till the fourth innings was itself a triumph.
The Lord kept in the test match, man.
Got it. Yeah. So the connection between the fourth innings and the first three innings is something that we tend to forget, which can't.
Yeah, the first inning. Look at, if you want to see, basically, here's the absolute, like the most reliable formula I can find. And I've been looking at this record for 10 years now. The most reliable evidence I can find of whether a fourth innings chase is viable is to look at the scoring rate in the first and second innings of the test match. If this asking rate is anywhere close to what the teams have managed in the first and second innings of a test match, they're going to chase those runs. There's a chance that they'll chase those runs. The other interesting feature is whether or not the third innings ended in a declaration. If the third innings ends in a declaration, run chases become far less likely. And it sort of makes sense, because you can imagine that, if a team is declaring, then it is choosing to ask the other side to bat when it wants to. Whereas if it's bowled out, it hasn't got a choice in the match.
Yeah, I think Bangladesh declared 8 down in that match against West Indies, and the border declared. But yeah, those are exceptions compared to these other chases that we're seeing.
So what more other than the scoring rate, it's also how quickly the match progresses, right? Like if 20 wickets fall in the first 2 days, then the third innings becomes extremely crucial for both teams. And let's say if 20 wickets fall in the first 2 days and one team has conceded a lead of 100. Now you think the team that has a 100-run lead is in the driver's seat, but now third innings becomes all the more important.
Because you're right. But you see, having 100 runs lead with 3.5 days to play is one thing. Having 100 runs lead with 2 days to play is another thing. No, because there's that much less time in the test match to make up that lead.
Point about run rates is interesting, because in that Edgbaston test that just finished, I mean that England beat India.
Yeah.
India's first innings run rate was 4.90.
Yeah.
Okay, where they scored 416. England's first innings run rate,
slower,
ball or whatever you make of it, was 4.61, which is slower.
Yeah.
And then India scored at nearly 3 runs and over in the third innings. And in the final innings, England scored at 4.93.
Yeah.
which seemed like astonishingly fast, but still it is almost the same as what India did in the first innings.
And the first innings run rate of the match.
Yeah. First innings run rate of the match. Yeah.
This is a pattern. This is something you notice over and over again if you pore over the records. And I first noticed this about 10 years ago. You know when? Guess when? Since we are talking about run chases and aborted run chases and whatnot.
This was probably Adelaide when India.
No, Dominica.
Oh, Dominica.
Yes. Dominica is the key word. It's great controversy.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Let's not get into that again. I think we spoke about that for 2 hours or something that day itself. And I'm looking at another test where that 2019 Headingley test that England won by 1 wicket. There, Australia's first innings run rate was 3.43. England got bowled out for 67 with a run rate of 2.4. Australia's second innings was 3.26. And then when England chased that target, 359 with Ben Stokes getting 135, their run rate was 2.88. So it was again much lower than.
But that's a little of a anomaly because the first innings was so short. It was, I think, 190 and 67. So
179 and 67, yeah.
179 and 67, correct. So those are just real. Those first innings are finishing really fast. So there's a lot of time remaining in the test match. So it's basically like a glorified 1 innings match at that point.
See, that's the problem, right? Like those are the type of matches where such abnormal results tend to pop up also, because it's not just the scoring rate, it's how quickly the first 20 wickets fall. If they both fall, like let's say within the lunch of day 3, so not half of the test match is gone, but half of the resources are gone. That means there is a chance for some kind of abnormal results to happen because there is a lot of time left in the match. So that is also a factor, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's true. Which is why, like, the GABA test of 2021 was probably like a more fairer example. I mean, Australia's first innings was at 3.19. India's first innings at 3 even. Australia's second innings at 3.87 because they were going for quick runs also towards the end. And India's chase was at 3.39. So yeah, nothing, all pretty steady.
That's why you need Pujara or Azhar Ali or people like that. You need some batsmen to consume time also.
No, but Pujara in Brisbane second innings was also probably scoring quicker in one phase than even Pant, right? Than even who was he batting with? Gill. Yeah.
Not for the match. I'm saying in general, you need people to eat some time out of the match so that you don't give opposition, any chance of scoring runs also.
That's true. They basically consume that time that the opposition can use to actually go for the target in the fourth innings. Yeah.
Correct.
You have to say, like, India are a bit of a special case. I mean, this current India, I don't think it's in their bones to play out a draw. That's been beaten out of them. Kohli will shout at them so loudly that they dare not go for it.
I mean, also given the amount of results, I mean, how many draws do we really get these days? I mean, we don't even. Yeah, the number of draws are so minimal. I mean, Sri Lanka has seen one draw in like 8 years or something like that. India has probably not seen a draw in a long time. So it's rare.
Dude, we saw one, man. We saw one in this very cycle against New Zealand. That last wicket denied India the victory. I think in Kanpur, right?
But that was ridiculous. I mean, I remember talking about that match. It had no business being that close. It should have been like a really dull, boring draw. But just because of the depth of resources that India had, that we came so close. And also, I don't think any other Indian team or any other team in the world could have come that close to a result on that wicket.
All right, I think we can wrap up now by picking out, 2, 1, 2, 3, how many ever you want of the favorite chases. This could be something that you've seen recently in the past, something you've read about, something you wished you had seen, anything. So yeah, let's. I'll start by plugging the book that we recently republished. Mike Coward's Cricket Beyond the Bazaar, which has like perhaps the best retelling of the Tide Test, and it is quite a remarkable chase. I mean, back in 1986, you're talking about 347 on the final day. I mean, that would have been some sight to watch. Sunil Gavaskar's 90, which everybody who has watched it has just spoken of in such high terms. Uh, and to actually think, I mean, India were the stronger team coming into that test. Australia were the much weaker team, at least in, as far as India saw. So India felt that they had to, you know, win this test. I mean, they felt confident enough that they could win it. Australia, Simpson basically convinced Border that he had to declare overnight to have any chance of winning it. But yeah, just to have been there, and of course, there was all this other tension of the umpires and the heat, and Alan Border nearly being sent off. Tim Zorer creating a fuss with Chetan Sharma and all that happened, the drama. But the actual batting and the cricket and the bowling and Greg Matthews getting those 5 wickets, India actually going for the chase, it would have been quite a stunning chase. My second favorite chase, I actually have to go with something from that 2008 test. And it was not so much 2008 India-England test in Chennai. It was not so much the final day that I remember as much as the day 4 in the end when Sehwag just came and absolutely blitzed them all over. And, that was just a sight to watch. Just this guy, I mean, Sehwag has played like so many remarkable innings, but that particular innings on that day 4 was that was like an innings that you watch standing up. I mean, there's no way you could sit down when watching him. It's like he is just going after everything that they were throwing at him. It was great to watch. And of course, in the final day, Tendulkar, Yuvraj all had a very good partnership. Great to watch the win. But yeah, Sehwag on day 4 on a fourth innings run chase was brilliant. So those are the two I will pick. Okay. Mahesh or anyone else?
Yeah, that Sehwag thing changed the whole game, right? I mean, if not for that innings, that would have been a draw. It doesn't matter what Sachin did, what Yuvraj did. If not for what Sehwag did, it would have been a draw at best.
I mean, he bought them time pretty much by scoring so quickly, right? I mean, that's the value that he had. He gave them that extra time to steadily go for the win. And of course, not to talk about the runs that he chopped off right in the beginning.
Okay, I will go next. Should it necessarily be a successful chase?
Not necessary, but
Oh,
Okay,
I
good.
know what's coming.
because the Tide Test was not a successful chase at the
Okay,
end.
at least
I mean,
it's
it
not a
was
loss.
tie. Yeah.
So
I know what's coming.
as part of preparation for this podcast, I did watch the highlights of some of the games that you're going to talk. You just talked about the Sehwag innings. I was just showing it to my son, and I was explaining him the concept of fourth innings chase and all that, and he enjoyed watching that immensely. Then I showed him, okay, now that you've seen this, let me show you the heartbreak, and I showed him Sachin's 136, and like in my mind, in a parallel universe, it's an innings that he played. Like he just took India to a close, and we won that match. And a lot of the nonsense about Sachin we've heard over the years would have been like unwritten and whatever, right? I mean, it is still very close to my heart, and it is close to my heart in a different way. I mean, for most of the times I've spent, like Sidvi has written about this as the mother of all heartbreaks and so on. For a lot of the years I spent thinking about the innings, about this innings that way. But I think in the last 10 years, I've grown more celebratory about the innings in the sense that I always, I mean, it's something that I've talked about before as well, right? Like Sachin had his probably signature test innings barely 3 months apart from when Lara had his signature, test innings, which was the 153 at Bridgetown. And very, very similar sort of innings. Lara was a bit lucky. Healy dropped the catch. And here Sachin, wasn't as lucky. Akram caught the catch. But of course, Sachin was also lucky. Today, I noticed that when he was on 90, there was a very easy stumping that Moin Khan missed. So of course, that's not the point of it. But the point is that it was a classic fifth day wicket. It was the kind of fifth day wicket that you would expect in India, especially in Chennai. You had Wasim Akram Bakauyunis bowling. Wasim Akram was bowling beautifully. And if you had any doubts, ask Rahul Dravid. And Sakline probably bowled. Sakline was in that kind of a purple patch that I don't think any spinner in Test cricket has ever been in a more popular patch than that. He was in that supreme form in that series. And the wicket was doing all kinds of things. To be able to play that innings required the absolute mastery of Sachin, and it was all on display.
Mongia made 52 in 135 on the same pitch, man. It was not so bad.
Oh, sure. What about the 5 other batsmen who got out?
Well, one of them was out bump ball. I mean, Ganguly was not out. It was not unplayable or anything like that.
It wasn't unplayable. Of course, if it's unplayable, no, like you wouldn't have got that score.
William Faulkner is like, it's 2:00 in the afternoon on what is it for? What is the day for every Southern boy, 14 years old? Not once when there is an instance where it's not yet 2:00 on that July afternoon in 1863. This is William Faulkner talking about Pickett's charge. This is the horrible Southern tragedy. And for this generation of Indian fans, it is that Thursday evening in Chennai, just as Sakla Mushtaq is running up to bowl to Tendulkar, and Tendulkar is charging out and skying a ball to mid-off where Wasim Akram takes a catch.
The next time I write a piece on this test, which will be not too, it'll be pretty soon, I'm sure, because I've made this test like my sort of some PhD thesis almost. I will quote this William Faulkner line of yours. Okay. Thank you.
I like William Faulkner's line.
No, hang on. My argument here is the opposite. That I used to be that guy, but now I want to celebrate this innings. I don't want to look at it as a heartbreak. It's okay he got out. It's okay, that the monkey of this innings he had to live with for the rest of his life and so on. I am just saying it was just so beautiful to watch Sachin bat like that. And in that over where he misses his stumping, Moin Khan misses his stumping, he scores 4 boundaries of Saklan. Oh my goodness, so beautiful to watch.
First of all, Mahesh, let's get this clear now. Is that the bigger heartbreak, or is Adelaide 2014 the bigger heartbreak? Because Rohit Sharma could have led India to the glorious victory in Adelaide 2014. Fellow got out for scoring like some 6 runs or some 5 runs or something.
Let's not go.
Anyway.
No. I haven't come to my second. The second one is this India-West Indies test in Bombay, which was, I think, Ashwin.
Ashwin run out.
Yeah, the Ashwin run out one, yeah. It was quite a bizarre test in the sense that I think first innings West Indies scored 590 or something, right? Darren Bravo made a very good 100, and then India replied with close to 400, 500, I think. So I wasn't even particularly interested in this test. It was happening in Bombay. I didn't even go there for some reason. And maybe it was a working day or something. Finally, it was a weekend and I went there and I was still trying to get tickets. And, all of a sudden, Pragyan Ojha has brought the test alive. So there was a dramatic change in the nature of the pitch. And you saw Pragyan Ojha, first of all, opening the bowling and taking 6 wickets. And West Indies were all out for a pretty cheap score. And West Indies didn't have a particularly deep bowling attack, right? They were playing with Fidel Edwards, Ravi Rampal, and the third bowler and the spinner who bowled the most overs is Marlon Samuels, and Devendra Bishu, the other spinner. So it was a fun test to watch because it was, nobody expected that test to pan out the way it did eventually. And I've always been fascinated with this. People keep talking about tight tests. I know tight tests are great. There's only been 2 great tight tests. I know it is so rare and I take all that, right? But to me, the first time I saw the scorecard of that England-Zimbabwe match, we flip and murder them, right? The draw with scores level. I was just blown away by the fact that it was even possible. I had read about tight tests before, but nobody told me that this was possible in Test cricket. So to me, draw with scores level was always the most exotic of Test cricket results. And to be able to see that live, what are the odds? That you will be watching a test live where such a thing happens again. And I'm not sure how many wickets were down in the England innings, not 9 for sure. But in this case, 9 wickets are down. Ashwin could have been run out going for the second test. So it could have been a tight test. And it was so close to being a win, but it eventually ended up being a draw with scores level. So I'll probably pick that one.
Okay.
Just for the
I think there have only been 2, even of those instances.
2, but nobody talks about it, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so 2 tight tests and 2 such tests.
Draw
so these are the lesser brothers in the exotic test results. Yeah.
Okay. So Khan had picked 136. I was about to say it, but thankfully both of you did not pick the greatest 4th inning chase of all time. It was a failure, but still it was the greatest. Astle 222.
Oh,
Right.
that was some hitting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I picked it specifically because I was lucky enough. I woke up early that day. I was able to see right when Stephen Fleming got out. After that, Aston started going mad. First, I think with Adam Parore, and then Chris Keynes comes back as the last wicket. He's injured or whatnot, so he gets a runner, and this guy just goes ballistic. And it was super fun to watch it. It was actually the best. I think Rob Linda has that video. He occasionally, plugs it in. You just have to listen to the shots, the sound of the bat connecting with the ball. It's so pristine. It's so beautiful. So, and it's my all-time favorite. One of my all-time favorite test innings. So that is one. The second is slightly regret-filled because that match was also telecast, but because of that match happening in West Indies, that Lara 153. So between lunch and tea, I think Lara just crosses 50 or 60 of this, and it's like 12 or 1 in the night, and I am forced by my parents to go to sleep. So I miss the exciting part of it. But I actually watch the last day, the play of the last day, when Adams had slowly started putting tent and staying there, and Lara is slowly getting into his groove. So that is one another test match where I was so full of excitement and anticipation, but disappointed that I couldn't see it till the end. So those are the two. So Lara 153 for bizarre reasons, and Astley for, even though if it's a loss, it was a glorious innings.
The Lara 153 was so remarkable. The second highest score was Adams with 38. And, they were 105 for 5, man, chasing 308 against that Australian team, with McGrath, Gillespie, Vaughan, and McGill also played that match. I'm looking at the scorecard. So, yeah, that was just absolutely remarkable innings. I mean, easily one of the best I've seen. And I should link Rahul Bhattacharya's famous Fly Lara Fly about that innings. Quite a brilliant piece of writing. KD?
Sorry, one thing. What's it about the time zone? One chase you picked like early in the morning, and the other one is late in the night. You don't pick any chases that you watch during human hours or what?
Yeah, no. Those are like school and college years, right? Like you're forced to wake up early to study, because early morning, if you study, you will retain more information, and you're forced to sleep early in the night. So I think that those two are the contributing factors. I did not study. That's the spoiler alert. But anyways, I was able to watch these matches when possible.
And that Astle test, the best thing was that in the third innings, Graham Thorpe had scored 200 of 231 balls.
He was dropped by Astle earlier.
Okay, that I don't remember, but I remember seeing the scorecard and I'm like, what? How did Graham Thorpe do this? And then the next day you find that some guy has actually gone even further and made this like 222 runs in what? Again, scorecard help in 168 balls. Oh man. And Astle coming down the track to those English pacers and just smashing them over is some sight. KD.
I'm not going to do tragedy and all, but I will point to like two cases which I wish I could have watched. Well, first is of course, Port of Spain in 1976. India chased 400. I wish I could have been there to see that. That would have been fun, because that was the chase which spawned Bodyline. It basically convinced Clive Lloyd that he had to hit people to become a force, or so the story goes. But I wish that would have been a chase worth seeing, just to see Inshan Ali and Rafiq Jumadeen and all those bowlers. And the second I wish I could have watched is Gordon Greenidge at Lords in 1984, when West Indies chased 344 on the last day, and Gordon Greenidge made a double century on one leg. That's just because it's a double century on one leg, I want to see that. It's like they chased 344 in like less than 400 balls. So that would have been something to see.
2 sessions,
and
right?
They won by
much.
9 wickets.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that would have been some innings been written about widely. The Port of Spain, by the way, I'm looking at the scorecard. It was Albert Padmore. He was the third spinner. So there was Imtiaz Ali, not Inshan Ali. Imtiaz Ali, Rafiq Jumadeen and Albert Padmore. Those were the spinners.
No.
Yeah. Good. It's a good range of test matches, ranging from 1976 all the way to 2008. Of course, we mentioned the Adelaide chase in 2014, and then we have spoken about all these recent chases: England, West Indies, Pakistan.
Before we finish, I want to give a shout out to Shiva, our friend, Atlas Dance from Twitter. He was there with me on that test at Bombay at Wankhede for the India West Indies test, which was a draw with scores level. And
this was 2011 and 12, right?
11, yeah. And he also claims that he was there in Chennai for the tie test. So what are the odds that the same person was at the ground for the tie test and another one with draw with scores level?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Does he claim that he was in Harare? That is the other question. Oh, Bulawayo, wherever that England Zimbabwe match was.
Possible. No. I'm a little surprised that he doesn't claim he was at Brisbane in 1960.
Half of Chennai with Chepauk in 1999, man.
I mean, I actually, 99, I was able to track down people to talk to who were at the test, and, they remembered where they sat and they remembered so many details. Now, I think my next project should be tracking down people who were at the 74 game. That might be the bigger challenge. Anyway, we should talk about that series, 74 series at some point. That is a great India-West Indies series. But as of now, we'll wait and watch what England does against South Africa, and then quite a few other games coming up. We plug for Cricket Beyond the Bazaar. I know I'm plugging it many times, but it's a wonderful book. Pick it up. Subscribe to our podcast, rate it, review it. 81allout.com is the website. We are at Twitter at 81allout. Send your feedback there or put a comment in the website. Anything will be great. And thanks guys for joining. And we'll hopefully see you sometime soon.